What's up, guys? Welcome to Political Fight Club. I'm Robert Durden. We're going to continue with Dreamland here, finish up the second part of Chapter 30 here that we started earlier today. Found myself a little extra time, so I figured, why not? I'm going to reread the last paragraph so we know where we are. We're on page 165, The Man in the Heartland. He couldn't have known it then, but arriving in 1998, it happened onto the biggest metro area in a 5-state region where, 2 years into Purdue Pharma promotional campaigns, opiate addiction was exploding due to abuse of this new drug called OxyContin. By his own good fortune, not far away was Portsmouth, Ohio, where scandalous pain clinics were just starting to follow the lead of Dr. David Proctor into a new business model of writing prescriptions for millions of these pills to long lines of addicts. Meanwhile, the pain revolution was in full swing in U.S. medicine. Specialists were urging well-meaning doctors everywhere to prescribe opiate painkillers for pain, convinced that when used this way, they were all but non-addictive. Central Ohio, in other words, was about to be a great place to be a heroin dealer. His black tar, once it came to an area where OxyContin had already tenderized the terrain, sold not to tapped-out old junkies, but to younger kids, many from the suburbs, most of whom had money and all of whom were white. Their transition from oxy to heroin, he saw, was a natural and easy one. Oxy addicts began sucking on and dissolving the pill's timed-release coating. They were left with 40 or 80 milligrams of pure oxycodone. At first, addicts crushed the pills and snorted the powder. As their tolerance built, they used more and more. To get a bigger bang from the pill, they liquefied it and injected it, but their tolerance never stopped climbing. OxyContin sold on the street for $1 a milligram, and addicts very quickly were using well over 100 milligrams a day. As they reached their financial limits, many switched to heroin, since they were already shooting up oxy and had lost any fear of the needle. Black tar was potent, far cheaper, and his delivery system made it easier to get than the pills. Plus, tar could be smoked, didn't have to be injected, which attracted kids to whom needles were at first anathema. The way he saw it, every oxy addict was a tar junkie in the waiting, and there were thousands of new oxy addicts. All he had to do was work it. His Nayarit brothers might never have figured this out. Like many Mexican immigrants who lived in Spanish-only enclaves, they were oblivious to subtle trends in the American society and culture in which they lived. As traffickers, they cared only to sell their dope and send money home. Drivers were short-timers all, on salary, there for 6 to 9 months, holed up in apartments, and knowing only a few words of English. No credit, or 15 minutes. Exchanged with desperate addicts who spoke no Spanish. Discovering emerging markets required an English speaker who understood the street. Landing in Columbus, just as the region around it was becoming ground zero in America's opioid epidemic, he could see the opportunities developing simply because he told me once, "I could talk to the white people." His arrival was a fateful coincidence. Other traffickers might have filled the eventual demand for heroin created in this region, where prescription pill abuse got bad first. Later, many did, but few were so ready to take advantage of it, so aggressive in their marketing, and so quickly replenished as the Jalisco boys and the man who brought them there. Wheeling taught the man that new markets were now everywhere that the pills were. With the boys working his store in Columbus, he found a place in Carnegie, Pennsylvania, a suburb of Pittsburgh and close enough to service other towns like Steubenville and Wheeling. He also eyed Nashville. Its Mexican population was growing, nearing 80,000 people. The town, he heard, was swamped in OxyContin. He set up one of his Columbus drivers along with a new kid from Jalisco in a store that was soon booming. Choose the right town and you can't miss, he thought to himself. The Nashville store covered his expenses for the expansion, and he eyed throughout the Mid-South. At the urging of another addict, he took a trip down to Virginia, through Roanoke, Richmond, and Newport News. It was another large market, but the federal government had too many installations there. Langley and a naval base made him nervous. He went through Chattanooga, Tennessee, a town with a lively underworld, but too small. Mexicans and cars would stand out. he drove down to Pensacola and Jacksonville but left. Florida is dominated by Colombians and Cubans and Puerto Ricans. That kind of race, they ain't got no understanding, he said. Kill, kill, kill. They think they can solve everything by killing. I wasn't going to kill nobody over drugs. I'd probably be buried the rest of my life in prison. He nixed Philadelphia, too. It had a huge heroin market, but it was run by the mafia and street gangs. He didn't even consider New York or Baltimore. It was crazy to think that a bunch of Mexican farm boys could break in there. Why would they want to? The country was full of towns like Columbus, wealthy places with growing numbers of addicts and no competition. So the contours of the Jalisco heroin nation took shape, based largely on the territory the man carved out by avoiding the biggest cities where heroin markets were already controlled, and by following the Oxy. He tried to keep his eastern tienditas a secret to his Nayarit friends. When he went back to Reno or LA to arrange deliveries, he always told friends that he was working on New York City. But in a small town like Jalisco, people talked. After a year in Columbus, his drivers went home for the Feria del Elote and started bragging about the great heroin market they were working up in central Ohio. By the fall of 1999, 2 more crews were in Columbus. One belonged to a former driver, now venturing out onto his own. 2 more followed. A kind of "go east, young man" ethos took a hold among the Jalisco boys. The price of heroin in Columbus fell. No crew leader could cut his dope unless he wanted to lose his clients, so the product stayed strong even as it got cheaper. Competition, as always, attuned the Jalisco crews to customer service. They even crossed the city to keep a customer and gave away free dope to any client hinting at quitting. One woman I met lived 25 miles outside Columbus, and at one point she hadn't called to buy for 3 days. A Jalisco boy called her. "Senorita, why haven't you been buying recently?" "I don't have any money," she said. He drove out to deliver $50 worth of heroin to her, for which he required no payment. "No, it's free," he said. "He wanted to keep me using and buying from him," she said. She did both. A year or so later, after the man settled in Columbus, he drove to Charlotte looking for bigger profits. Addicts told him he would make $1 million there. No one there had seen anything like black tar. Heroin, in fact, had only a small market in Charlotte. He met junkie contacts at the town's methadone clinic and gave them free samples. Soon, business boomed again. He pulled a driver out of Columbus and another out of Nashville, and they set up the black tar heroin franchise in Charlotte. A couple weeks later, the Sanchez family from the ranchos near Jalisco arrived. They had an addict guide of their own, a big Native American fellow. The Sanchezes owed their expanding heroin empire to addicts. Addicts had guided the family out of the San Fernando to Las Vegas, then to Memphis and Nashville, and from there to Charlotte. The man didn't know them, only knew of them. They were cousins of the late David Tejeda from the rancho of Aquia Cerdan, down the road from Jalisco. Now they were in Charlotte too. It was bound to happen. It was a free market after all. All right, so we'll continue with Bodies Are the Key to the Case on page 169 with the next episode. Hope you're enjoying the book, guys. Talk to you later.